morning, everybody. Welcome back to Zoo School Live. We apologize for the delay this morning. We were having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we seem to be up and running now. My name is Laura, and today we're going to be meeting one of my absolute favorite animals here at the zoo. I feel like I say that a lot, but this one is for real one of my favorites. He is a scaly animal, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how we care for and enrich this animal, as well as responsible pet ownership, because his story actually, his background is that he was a pet before he came here to the zoo and unfortunately was unable to be cared for anymore. So he has a happy ending to his story, but unfortunately many times people get caught up in the excitement of bringing home a new animal and they maybe didn't do as much research as they should. So because May is actually Pet Awareness Month, we're going to talk today about how to be a responsible reptile pet owner and all the different ways you can help provide the best life for that. As always with other episodes of Zoo School Live, be sure to leave comments below if you have any questions, anything you want to know that we didn't cover today. And if you're catching this episode later, you can always do the same and we'll pop back on Facebook to reply. So without further ado, I'm going to bring out my friend. His name is Rodney, and if you are a Zoo School regular, you may have remembered him from last year. He's going to be coming out to explore a really fun space we set up for him today, as well as getting some of his snacks. So I'm going to have him come on out onto this big grass mat we have here. Hi, bud. Good morning. He is very excited to meet all of you today. He is super, super revved up and warmed up and ready for some exploring. So Rodney is an African Savannah monitor, and this is a large type of lizard that, as you probably can guess, is normally found on the African Savannah. So they are going to really enjoy hot, warm temperatures. If we get a nice close look at our friend Rodney, we can actually see, like other reptiles, he is covered in scales. And his scales are going to protect him in a couple different ways. They're going to keep him well camouflaged. You can see that tan and yellow and brown color. They're going to keep him well camouflaged and hidden on the savanna, where there's a lot of grasses and dirt and sand. And then they're also going to protect him from the environment around him. So he might be climbing along rocks and sticks and exploring, digging, and he has to have some nice protective armor to keep him from getting all scratched up. So today we actually set up this space for him. It's not quite what he would find in the wild. He's going to prefer, again, a little bit of a more dry, sandy place. But when we have animals here at the zoo, we try to give them spaces that they can kind of explore and engage their body in different ways. So we have some dirt here, some different plants with different smells, and we'll talk about why all of those are very important parts of keeping Rodney active. So Rodney actually came to the zoo in 2015, and unfortunately, he was a pet that his owner just was unable to care for him anymore. Now, thankfully, his owner looked for a good place to take him. They made a good decision to find a nice, responsible home here at the zoo. We're going to get him turned around a little bit. There you go, buddy. Instead of just kind of dumping him or trying to, sell him off or give him out to somebody who maybe wouldn't have been the best owner. So that's always a great thing when an animal can find a nice forever home. Unfortunately, for a lot of reptiles and other animals, if they are no longer able to be kept as a pet, that's not quite what happens. So it is important to know when you are interested in a type of animal, potentially as a companion, exactly what you're getting into. So we're going to cover all the things that Rodney needs to stay healthy and happy here at the zoo, and that he would also need in your home. If you thought, man, Rodney's a super cool lizard, I want to have one of those with me at home, here's everything that requires. So he is going to be very active. You can see he's a pretty big lizard. He actually weighs close to 9 pounds. That's a pretty big boy. And he's around over 3 feet long. They can get slightly bigger than this. Now, Rodney's basically full grown. At 9 years old, he's not going to get too much bigger than this. But he is a very large lizard, so he does need a whole lot of space. And of course, Rodney's probably going to find a little place to hang out back there. We might have to ask him to come around this way. Hi, buddy. And we'll talk about why he might be trying to go underneath the table. But he's a really big guy, so that means he needs a really big space to live and to exercise. So this is not an animal that you could easily keep in a small tank or a small cage. You would need to provide him lots of space. On top of being a large-bodied animal, he also would really love to dig. So you guys can see we have some soil here. He has some substrate that he can dig in his enclosure, because in the wild, Savannah monitors are actually going to be a burrowing species. They're going to spend a lot of time underground at the hottest part of the day. So they might really like nice warm temperatures and the heat of the African savanna, but when it's the hottest out, they're actually going to burrow and dig and find a nice, humid, cool spot to hang out. So you need to kind of replicate that. Anytime we have an animal in our care at the zoo, we're going to do our best to recreate their wild habitat. And for Rodney, that means he needs a place to burrow and dig, and he needs a place where he can get out of the heat if he wants to. Now, in the African savanna, it can sometimes get up to over 100 degrees. That's how hot it can be during the midday. So Rodney, in general, does need warm temperatures. So here at the zoo, we provide him some basking sites where he can warm up. I'm actually going to bring him over this way, see if he wants to come and hang on our nice soil spot, see if he wants to dig a little bit. So here at the zoo, we give him specialized light bulbs that emit a lot of heat. His enclosure sometimes can get into the 90 degrees or higher range. He also needs what we call UV light, which is basically a replication of the sun. So we need to provide him ways to get the same vitamins he would from natural sunlight in the wild, which is very, very important. In fact, especially with reptiles, if they don't get that, they can develop some bone disorders. So we need to make sure he has lighting and heating just as close as we can get to what he'd have in the wild. Now, on top of the size and the very specific light and heat requirements, he does need some food. He's a pretty big lizard. He likes to eat. Right now he's having fun exploring and trying to burrow under our table, which is great. But I actually did bring some snacks for him today, so we'll see if he wants to eat with you guys, have some breakfast. Now, in the wild, savanna monitors are going to be pretty much strict carnivores. They're not going to eat very many plants. They're going to prefer to hunt down bugs. Thanks, Rodney. He's going to keep me on my toes today, huh? So they're going to prefer to eat a lot of invertebrates and insects. They're actually experts at eating snails, believe it or not. He's got some seriously powerful jaws to crush things. So in the wild, he might hunt down snails and be able to crush them in his jaws. He could eat little bugs, worms, grubs. He can dig up a lot of things while he's burrowing, and that's going to provide him a lot of his substance. Now, he also can eat bigger things. They will eat smaller reptiles, little mammals, potentially some frogs, things like that, some fish. But bugs and invertebrates are going to make up a lot of their food. Here at the zoo, he gets kind of a mixture of different things. He gets something called meat pie, which might sound interesting to us, but Rodney really enjoys it. It's kind of a mixture of all different kinds of vitamins and minerals. He gets little bits of mouse, little bits of ground up meat, and of course he gets crickets and other bugs. So today I have some of his little meat products. We're going to see if he's interested. You guys might notice that he has a very... All right, so we're going to see if we can get him to come a little bit closer to the camera. I've got some snacks. So he has a forked tongue similar to a snake, and that forked tongue is going to help him to smell and explore. So we're going to see if we can get his attention. You might notice, him start flicking that tongue a little bit faster. And what that forked shape helps him to do is to pinpoint where his food might be. So he can kind of wiggle it back and forth and tell which direction that delicious smell is going to come from. And we're going to help him out a little bit here, make sure he can get nice and close. Unfortunately, Rodney does have a little bit of difficulty seeing things out of one of his eyes. He is an older gentleman lizard, so he's got some eye issues that we are treating. And that's a big thing you need to keep in mind too if you're planning to bring an animal home to share your life with, is that they're going to require health care just like you are. So it's important to make sure you consider that. And if you can imagine, finding a veterinarian, an animal doctor, to care for an exotic animal is not always very easy. A lot of our veterinarians treat kind of our standard animals, like cats and dogs and maybe some smaller rabbits and things, but not everybody treats lizards. So it's important to make sure you have a veterinarian in your area who can help you if your exotic animal is having some problems. Now, Rodney, as I mentioned, is 9. He is a little bit older. African Savannah monitors can actually live, if they're healthy, to be around 15 to 20 years old. So that's a huge commitment that not everybody thinks about. If you consider some of our smaller pets, like a cat or a dog, 15 to 20 is pretty far up there for how long you're going to have that animal around. But some of our more exotic species, like lizards, reptiles in general, things like birds, they might actually have a really, really long lifespan. Certain turtle species can actually live to be over 60, 70, 80 years old. Same thing with certain birds. And so a lot of times people bring home a reptile that's really small and young. In Rodney's case, when he was a baby, he would have only been about this big compared to what he is now. So that's like the size of his head. So he would have come home as a very small lizard, very cute. You could easily keep him in your home. And then all of a sudden, as the years went by, he started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's just a kind of a common theme with a lot of our reptiles, is they start off very small and unfortunately grow bigger than we expect, and we maybe can't maintain that. You not wanting that piece? Okay. So, unfortunately for Rodney, his original owner was unable to keep him, but they did find a nice home for him here at Elmwood Park Zoo. Now, we cannot accept everybody's pets. We just don't have the space or the time or the resources. And so, unfortunately, in some places, people will actually dump their reptiles out into the wild and think, oh, well, hopefully they'll survive, they'll make it. Many times they don't, because they're just not designed to live in a habitat like what we have around here, but in some cases they do. If you've ever been to a pond and you've seen a red-eared slider, that is a type of turtle that was not normally found here in Pennsylvania, but over the years has become what we call naturalized. So many of them were introduced into the area that they started to breed and survive. And what happens is those animals can sometimes push other native species out. So the red-eared slider is better at surviving and succeeding than our normal native painted turtles. So this can be an issue when we are introducing populations of species that didn't naturally occur here. In some of the southern states, especially Florida and Georgia, there are many species of reptile that have become invasive and are problematic for the native reptiles and sometimes even other species. If you're talking about a lizard the size of Rodney or something like Tango or Tegu, that animal can eat a lot. They can eat a lot of smaller animals, and so they can actually cause problems for species of mammal and bird in that area too. So dumping your reptile out into the wild is not giving it a good option. It's most likely not going to end well, and if it does survive, it could cause problems way into the future. Oh, he's really enjoying that snack right now. But obviously, many people are drawn to reptiles and exotic animals. They find them fascinating, and they can make great pets as long as you look into what you're doing. Now, that means I don't want you guys to watch the Zoo School episode and think you're an expert in Savannah monitors, because we barely covered any of that information. It's always good to look into other resources, talk to many different people, find out what their experience was, and of course, try to rescue or adopt when possible, rather than purchase a baby animal. There are so many adult animals that need homes out there. Now, despite the normal kind of misconception that reptiles are dumb, that's fine. He can do whatever he wants in this area. We're going to have him come back on the mat a little bit here. He's so funny. But in general, we kind of always have thought that reptiles didn't need a lot of attention, that they didn't need toys, that they didn't explore. And that's very, very false. We're learning so much about lizards and snakes and turtles and their ability to learn and their ability to engage with their surroundings. And it's important to provide them those opportunities. So for him, we give him different types of enrichment, like different foods. We give him things to climb in, to smell. He also was target trained. So I'm going to see, he might be a little bit too distracted today, and that's okay. But he was at one point trained to touch his nose to this little ball and then get a little snack. So we're going to see if he wants to do it. I'm going to come around the other side here. Sometimes he gets way too excited about all the other things, so that's okay. Hi. Would you like to touch this ball? Oh, that was kind of a cheat. Good job, buddy. Now the question is, will he eat the snack? Because there's so many exciting smelly things. Good boy, Rodney. So in Rodney's younger years, he actually used to follow that target all over the place. He'd run back and forth. He's getting a little slower now as he gets up there, but he does still enjoy, it's on your nose. He does still enjoy targeting occasionally now and then, and that's a really great way to kind of encourage his natural movement and his hunting abilities, because, you know, he doesn't really get a chance to explore and forage and hunt for his food as much as he would in the wild, so target training can help with that. We'll see if he wants to do one more. Want to do one more? Good job, buddy. We'll give him easy ones today. He's more excited about exploring and sniffing than he wants that snack. There you go. Good job. All right, guys. So we're going to see if anybody has any questions. Oh, it looks like Helena has a question. She wants to know what colors can they be. Question is from Juliana and Emmy. Oh, that's a great question. Thanks so much. So typically this is your normal African Savannah monitor color. They aren't usually going to be a lot of variety. They're often going to be kind of this tan, yellow, and brown color. And that's because that's going to help them to camouflage. We can get another close look at his scales real quick. He's got some really cool patterns on his scales. So all over his body, he's got some spots, and then towards the tail, he's actually got some stripes. So this is a pretty standard pattern for our Savannah monitors. All right, it looks like Marissa wants to know, does he have teeth? He does, in fact, have lots of teeth. Now, his teeth are not super, super big. They're going to be a little bit smaller, but his teeth are found in his mouth just like other animals. His are going to kind of be rows along the parts of his jaw. So we can kind of get close to Mr. Rodney and see if we can see his nice big jaw. You can see that big tongue. He's probably going to come and say hi. So inside of there, they do have some small, very sharp teeth. It's those jaws that are actually going to be the powerhouse for him. That's what's really going to help him to crush and swallow his food. Now, his teeth do not help him to grind things up. They are not designed like our teeth. As omnivores, we have many different shapes of teeth that help us to chew and grind our food up into small amounts. Rodney doesn't have that. His are more designed for gripping and grabbing so that he can catch his food. And then what he does is he smashes it with those powerful jaws, and then he swallows it in big, big chunks. So he can actually swallow a whole small egg in one kind of bite, which is pretty impressive. That's like you guys going home and chomping down on a whole chicken. Very, very impressive. But it's important because in the wild, they have to hunt for their food and try to swallow it quickly so that they don't become food. Remember, I mentioned that camouflage. I mentioned the fact that they burrow and they can hide. That's because on the savannah, they are not the biggest predator out there. There are much, much larger creatures that are going to be looking for a meal as well. So he wants to be able to hide from things like lions and leopards and hyenas, even potentially bigger snakes and lizards. Great questions today, guys. So I'll give you guys another moment to enjoy Mr. Rodney exploring, because now he's doing a really nice job checking out his enrichment. Smelling around using that big, big tongue. And as always, if you guys are watching later on and you have other questions, please feel free to post them, and we will come back and review them and answer them. Rodney's one of my favorites. He's actually the first animal I ever got to really train here at the zoo. And he often is kind of described as a big, scaly puppy dog. African Savannah monitors can be very docile, can be very calm around people, especially if they are cared for at a young age. So while unfortunately Rodney's owner wasn't able to continue caring for him throughout his whole life, they did a great job raising him. And so that we are thankful for that. Again, if you guys think that an exotic animal might be something you'd like to bring home, always, always, always do your research and make sure you're finding it and bringing it home from someplace responsible. So that means looking into where the breeder gets the animal from, if you're getting it young, what the rescue does and what their mission is, and whether that species is endangered or considered at risk in the wild. Thankfully, Savannah monitors are not. They do face threats like habitat loss and poaching and things like that. And actually the pet trade was the #1 thing that threatened them for a really long time because people were going out into the wild, collecting them and bringing them, you know, and shipping them out to different places. Now, many times they are raised in human care to begin with, so they are not being taken out of the wild. But that's a really big thing to look into and make sure you understand if you're going to bring home an exotic pet. All right, guys, we'll get a nice big close-up of Mr. Rodney before we say goodbye for the day. Thank you all for joining us. Again, if you have any questions about Rodney or questions in general about the care we provide for our reptiles, we're always happy to share and happy to guide people in the right direction, especially during our Pet Awareness Month here. And be sure to tune in on Friday this week, friends. We're actually mixing it up, so we will not be on Thursday. We'll be on Friday for a special Zoo School Live featuring some of our barn animals. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Thank you for joining myself and Rodney. He is just a doll. He's going to give us one nice glamour shot there at the end. And we will see you guys later.